Hello artist, it's Mrs. Simpson here, and in this demonstration video I'm going to show you how to finish your ugly dolls. So most of us have, or almost all of us at this point, should have our two pieces of felt cut out, laid on top of each other, and many of us have already started the sewing process. If you're still in the process of finishing, that's what I want to show you here today. How do we finish our ugly dolls? So this is the one that I use for a demonstration. You can see that I have different kinds of stitches on here to remind you of your options. So I'm going to show you how to finish today. For those of you who need to start with your needle and thread, just a reminder, you need to start with threading your needle. You'll take your thread and you're going to take your needle, and we need to put the thread through the top of the needle where that little hole is. And then we are going to pull the thread, and we are going to have our thread run parallel to each other to get this started. That means that we have our thread running side by side here, okay? Then at the ends of our two pieces, we want them to be even. And then our needle should be at the ends, okay? So once we have our thread through the needle, the thread is running side by side, I need to tie a knot at the end with those two pieces of thread. So we are going to treat this thread as one piece. We're not tying it like shoelaces with two pieces. We are tying it as one piece. So I'm going to take that one piece and I'm going to wrap it around my two fingers. Just wrap it around my two fingers. Again, just wrap it around two fingers. Whoop. Next, what I'm going to do is, I'm still holding the end here. I'm going to take my end and I'm going to cross it over. So now I have a little cross. I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to come through and I'm going to grab that. And now if I pull, I get a knot. But I need to pay attention to where I'm pulling, because I don't just want to pull and have my knot right there. I want to bring my knot as far down as possible to the ends of my thread here. So if you just you can slide it down there. And if I pull, it's hard to see in the camera, but there's my knot, and there's the end. So you can see how that tail there is very small. So you want to bring your knot as close to the end of your thread as possible. So now I have my needle threaded. To get started, I am going to poke my needle through both pieces of my fabric or my felt, and I'm going to pull it all the way to the ends, but stopping right when I get to my knot. All right, my knot's right there. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to, below the knot, I'm going to separate with my needle those two pieces of thread. And then I'm going to pull, I'm going to push it through. So what I did is I put my needle through those two pieces of thread, and you remember this because many of us already did this. And then when I pull, it's stuck. So that thread isn't going to go anywhere as I continue to sew. Okay? So to start sewing, there's two stitches we talked about. We have a little running stitch here, and where we push it through one side, push it through the other, and we just keep going back and forth, back and forth. This is a little running stitch, see that? And then my needle's on the opposite side, so I need to push it through that side, okay? That's one way you can do it. Or you can simply just keep poking your needle through the same side. And then what you will get is the stitch that wraps around. So there's two different styles of stitches. You could even alternate if you wanted. Each one will add some lines to the outside of your ugly dolls. All right, so I'm gonna go through here and I am going to finish sewing my ugly doll. What you don't want to do as you're sewing is sew it all the way up. Remember, we have to leave a little gap here, at least so that 2 fingers can fit inside, okay? Because that's where we are going to end up stuffing our ugly doll. But before we can stuff it, what we need to do is we need to think about the face and the features on our ugly doll. So what you should all have is some scrap felt. What you want to do with this scrap felt is to cut out your ugly doll's facial features. And many of you still have your paper template in your envelope as well. So you can look at your original idea that you wanted. Remember, we were using simple shapes to cut those facial features out, okay? So I'm going to do that now. And I'm going to keep mine pretty simple here. Okay, so there we have the features on my ugly doll. I gave him kind of like this grim looking face. He has some eyes, and then I just decided to do like these X's for like little stitches on parts of his body. So what you need to do next is hot glue your felt on there. We need to be very careful with the hot glue gun as it's super duper hot. And you need to make sure that there's someone to help you if you have someone to help you. And you can then hot glue each picture on, or each felt feature on. If you don't have hot glue, you could use some kind of tacky glue or fabric glue if you have that available. Otherwise, I'm going to hot glue mine now. So I have my hot glue gun. It is hot and ready to go. I need to be super duper careful because it is very hot. I do not want to touch any of the metal parts of the hot glue gun. I do not want to touch any of the glue that comes out of this end of the hot glue gun. Why? You're going to get burnt. And it stings really bad for only the first few seconds. But it's enough to leave a little blister. This end is where you will put your glue stick through. This is okay to touch, but we do not want to touch anything on this end. We can get really hot, or when the glue comes out. All right, so to get started, I'm going to start with my bottom pieces first. I'm just going to add a little bit of glue, and I'm going to glue them on. Hot glue and felt are gonna stick really well, so you don't need a lot. Try to go around the edges and watch your fingers as you glue. Okay, so what's next? Now that you have, and hot glue dries really fast, so it is cooled. I don't have to worry about burning myself now. The little stringies you'll be able to pull off once they dry, all right? So next, to completely finish our ugly doll, we need to stuff it. So you should have a little clump of stuffing. You don't need much because our ugly dolls are super small. What you're going to do is you're going to take a little bit of your stuffing, and in that opening that you left, you are now going to start taking little bits at a time, and you're going to stuff it all the way in there. So now our flat shape is really becoming three-dimensional. Now, it's not a pillow, so we don't need to stuff it so much that it's going to burst, but just enough to give it form or a little three-dimension, okay? So once my stuffing's in there, the next thing I need to do now is sew it up. So I still have my needle and thread on here. If you ran out of needle and thread towards the end, then you'll start at the beginning like we did when we started up here. So you have to thread your needle all over again and loop and tie your thread through the fabric or the felt, okay? So now I'm going to hold this together and I'm going to finish it off. All right, there we have it. Now, how do I get my needle off of here? Now in the classroom, I was really helping everyone individually. There was a handful of friends who also could tie off the knot. So let me show you here in the video. This is much better than the video is much better than a demonstration in live class anyway, because you can stop and replay and stop and go back and watch me do this, even in slow motion if you would like. All right, so to do it, make sure you leave yourself a long tail. So if you don't have a long tail, then you went too far. So when you're sewing, regardless of if you're sewing all the way to the end or, you know, around your ugly doll, at some point when you get to a point like this where you're running out of thread, you can't keep sewing because you need that thread to tie a knot. All right, even a little bit more thread than this will be a lot more easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do actually one last stitch here. And I want to tie a little knot around this last stitch. So in order to do that, I am just going to take my needle and I'm going to come back and I'm going to stick my needle underneath that last stitch. See that? See how it's under it? And then I'm going to pull it through. Now I'm going to do it one more time. So I'm going to put my needle underneath that last stitch. Now I am, no, I'm not going to do that. Hold on one second. Put my needle under the last stitch. I didn't leave myself enough thread, so that gets a little challenging. All right, but instead of pulling it all the way through, you see how I have that little loop there? If you have more thread, this is going to be a lot easier. I am now going to, now that I pulled it through a little bit, I am going to go through that loop with my needle and I'm going to pull it through, and now I have a knot on that little stitch. So I can trim that off, and my ugly doll is complete. So if any of those steps went too fast for you or you need to go back and check them out, the demonstration videos are really great for that because you can go back, you can rewatch, you can pause, and you can just keep watching over and over. Make sure you go back and you can trim off any pieces that are hanging up so you have nice, good craftsmanship. It looks neat and clean. You could go back and glue down any areas that are still sticking up, but in the end, you now have your three-dimensional art project, which is our ugly dolls. You could even give yours a name. Make sure that we're being safe with our materials. When you're done with the needles, put them in a safe place. Make sure you unplug hot glue guns and you keep them somewhere safe to cool so that your hands or any other little hands that may be around don't touch them and get burnt. Also make sure that there's a grown-up around to help you if you need help finishing any of these steps. Well done, 5th grade. Keep up the amazing work and enjoy your middle school years.